Good morning everyone, welcome to another video. Today I'll be talking about how to accurately determine cost pricing for your cold process soap making. I've also included a spreadsheet, much like last time, in my SAP calculation video, my saponification video, and this will be available in the same section as that, so just head on over to the link in the description into the content creation page. And it'll be available there for download free of charge, so I'm hoping that this will help you. I know this is something I definitely struggled with at the beginning when I was trying to work out my cost pricing, and that I had to learn as well that volume and weight aren't the same, especially with oils, which I will get into detail in the next few slides. So stay tuned, hopefully it won't be too long, but I'm trying to keep it as informative as possible. So just by starting off, we'll go over the benefits of going by weight versus volume, and of course I use the metric system because I'm here in Australia, and I highly recommend wherever you are in the world, even if you're using the imperial system like in the United States, when you're working with soap recipes, I just recommend you use metric because it's very accurate, there's less room for error, and you'll produce consistent results. And especially when we're talking about essential oils and how much they weigh, because the weight and volume is not the same. And obviously we're looking at safety as well, and you always go by weight when it comes with essential oils. With carrier oils, as you know, when you are formulating a soap recipe, you work with the weight and not volume. So these are the things that we have to consider for our soap recipes. And working with safety, I'll just go on about safety again, you don't want to cause any dermal irritants or irritations or sensitivities, and we want to produce consistent results. And when we're working with blends, as I covered in my aromatherapy video, if you got used to the way a certain blend smells and is beautiful and you like it, you want to recreate that consistency through oil batches. So that's why we go with weight as well, and I will cover all the benefits to those in the slides that are coming after. Right, so here we're going to be looking at the volume to weight ratio, or otherwise known as density. So you'll hear me referring to oils and to their density. So what I mean by that is how much they weigh to volume ratio, and plus we use water as a guide, because water is one of those things that 1 mil, or the volume to weight ratio is identical, so 1 mil will weigh 1 gram, or 10 mils of water will weigh 10 grams, or 50 mils will weigh 50 grams, and so on and so on. But again, there's still marginal of error with going by volume even with water, because if you're relying on eyesight and you see, for example, 50 mils of water and you fill it up to 50 mil, and even if it's slightly over, it could be 51 grams of water, it could be 52 grams of water, so it's not entirely an accurate way when we go by volume, but by weight it's incredibly accurate. So most carrier oils, they have a density between 0.89 and 0.96. So that's the ratio of, when you look at with water, how it's 1 mil to 1 gram. So basically, if you really want to break it down to a percentage, they have between 0.89% and 0.96% of water, the weight-wise. And if we look at essential oils, it's the same thing, 0.84% of, or 84% of the weight of water, to 91% of the weight to water. So these are the differences of how much they weigh, and it's really important to know what you're working with weight-wise when it comes to carrier oils and essential oils, and it'll differ between each type. Here we'll be looking at the density of my two favorite oils, olive and coconut. So I'm just going to provide as simple as I can calculation wise, even though in the spreadsheet that I'll provide you don't have to actually do these calculations because it does it for you. but I thought it's important just to go through quick to see how it's kind of done behind the scenes. I tend to just run to my calculator if I want to work something out, because I'm so used to doing it on the calculator that it's just second nature for me now. But I thought I'll just go over it anyway. So we know that olive oil density is 0.90. So we get out our calculator, and let's say you're buying a 500ml bottle of olive oil. So you do 0.90, which is the density, times 500ml, and you get 450 grams. So that's how much 500ml of olive oil weighs. And let's say you paid $5 for it. So $5 divided by 450 is 0.0111. And then you get that figure and you times it by a kilo or 1,000 grams, and it works out to be $11.10 a kilo. So that's how we work out the exact price. And as you can see, we work with 4 decimal places because we want to be as precise as we can with how much it costs per gram. So with coconut oil, it weighs just a little bit heavier than olive oil, so it sits at density 0.92. And when we do the calculation for that, 0.92 times 500ml, for example, if that's what we're buying, and 500ml, and that works out to be 460 grams. Let's say again we paid $5 for it. $5 divided by 460 is 0.0108 grams, and when we times that by a kilo, it works out to be $10.80 a kilo. So here we are looking at 2 extra carrier oils, just for a quick example. Castor oil, I believe, by memory, castor oil weighs the most out of any carrier oil. It's very thick and viscous, and it's quite heavy compared to other oils. So that has a density of 0.96. So let's say buy 500ml, do that calculation, and you get 480 grams, and you pay $5 for it, and you get 0.0104 grams. And if you times that by 1,000 grams, that's $10.40 a kilo. For sunflower oil, it sits at 0.91, so it sits in between coconut and olive oil on average, and 500ml of that is 455 grams. And let's say again you pay $5 for 455 grams, that works out to be 0.0109, and when you times that by 1,000, you get $10.90 a kilo. Sunflower oil, I use that as an example because a lot of fragrance oils or natural fragrance oils, they are used in sunflower oil base because it's a very neutral base. And when it's a refined sunflower oil, whether it's organic or non-organic, it has a very, very neutral odor, and it has a long shelf life. So sunflower oil is generally the one they go to disperse fragrances or fragrance compounds in the oil itself. So if you buy a fragrance oil, you don't have to calculate essential oils or anything else. You just look at sunflower oil, and this is your exact calculation for working out per gram how much your fragrance oil costs. So this is a really important one. And I was going to do another carrier oil, but I thought sunflower oil will cover both of those. So that's the example I use for the 4th carrier oil. Right, so I'll be covering 4 essential oils, and it's actually quite easy for you to find out what densities with the essential oil you're working with. You just go onto Google and you type in, like for example, lavender essential oil density, or cedarwood essential oil density, olive oil density, coconut oil density, anything regarding density you can easily find out. There's lots of information on Google, and I highly recommend you also do your own research. But from my experience as well, and from obviously researching lavender essential oil density, I'm comfortable to say it's at a density of 0.88. So again, we do the calculation, 0.88 times 500 is 440 grams. And let's say, for example, even that's going to be much more expensive than $10, but for argument's sake, it's $10 divided by 440, 0.0227, and you times that by 1,000 grams, so it works out to be $22.70 a kilo. Cedarwood essential oil has a density of 0.95, and when you times that by 500, it's $4.75. Let's say we paid $22. 22 divided by 475.0463 is the result, and we times that by 1,000 grams, it's 4630. So the last two examples are rose geranium essential oil and peppermint essential oil, and density of rose geranium is 0.88 and the density of peppermint essential oil is 0.89. So this is just a quick way of how to calculate the cost. Right, so hopefully that didn't confuse you. Even me, to this day, if I look at numbers too long or calculations or densities, I can get a bit of a headache. But I've tried to simplify it as much as possible. So this is the general idea regarding cost pricing with cold process soap making, and when you're working with carrier oils and essential oils. And the next portion of this video is me going through the spreadsheet that I made, just showing you the ropes of how it works and operates. I tried my best to get the resolution as clear as possible. It might be better viewable on a desktop computer or a laptop, because where you can go into a big full screen or maybe a tablet. So if you can't see it properly on your mobile, just head on over to a desktop or a laptop or maybe a large tablet, and you should be able to go into full screen mode and use it as a tutorial. But this will definitely be available to download in the content creation donation section of my website. So just head down to the link below and you can get yourself a free copy there. So we'll just get into the Excel spreadsheet portion of it, and hopefully it's clear. So I'm not too sure how it's going to be, but fingers crossed. So this is the spreadsheet that I made. I tried to keep it as simple as possible. There are formulas in the background that are at play here. I couldn't avoid that. That's what makes Excel work and work so great. I highly suggest you become at least somewhat familiar with Excel. There are plenty of tutorials out there, but I'll try my best to kind of steer you in the right direction as to what is happening here. So I like to organize, this is what I use actually personally, but I've truncated it down quite a lot because the section on the left with all my inputs are significantly large, so I didn't want to bombard you all with all that. So I tried to just keep it with the most common type inputs that I think that people would use in their cold process soap recipes. So everything that's in green over here on the left, that is the cost per gram or units, depending on what it is, and it relates to these quantities here and in the green here. So the green actually, what I'm asking it to do on the right side. If you look over here, let's go to olive oil, for example, and I click here in the formula bar. So it says J2, that's the reference. Everything in Excel is a reference. So if you go to J2 and on the top you see A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, and then you see number 2, which is the second down, that says 700, and it wants to times it by 75, E75. So E is this green column here. If you go all the way down to 75, that's olive oil, and that's 700 times that cost price per gram, and it gets the cost price by the weight I've put in and the price. So if I just double click that, sorry, the price down here isn't showing because it's not big enough. Sometimes if you see, I'll point that out because it happens to me sometimes. If you see these hashtags here, that just means the column isn't wide enough to display, so you just make it big and it shows up. So here, olive oil, that's the weight and that's how much it is, and it calculates per gram. So it's doing 700, which is part of my this particular cold process soap recipe, times, and if you scroll down, once it's selected in the formula bar, you see that it's using that reference against J2 reference. So 700 times the cost price for olive oil. And if you go down to coconut oil, same thing, J3, it's not going to be J2 because we're looking at J3 reference, and that's 300 grams. And if the formula bar is selected, whereas you can type in there, and then you scroll down, you'll see it in red, coconut oil, And it's the same for distilled water. Distilled water is up the top, so it's an easy one. That's the reference for distilled water. That's the reference for sodium hydroxide. And that is the reference for sodium lactate. So I'll quickly point out before we continue, the reason why there are dollar signs before the, like an alphabetical number, and another dollar sign before the actual number for the reference, it's because it makes this formula copy and pasteable. So if I do, for example, another column under here, I can actually copy all that without having to do all the references again, and paste, and that's why there are dollar signs. So it keeps everything, all these formulas pasteable, and that's what you want. And also, if you look here, since I've got it here, and if you change like some figures, let's say, just for argument's sake, you want to do 500 grams of each, then this price here will adjust, and obviously the price here will adjust as well. And that's why using the dollar signs are important. You don't have to. I mean, if you're happy to go back to this column over here and use this as a reference, then that's fine. For each input that you do, you can do that. But for me, I like to just quickly bang, 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 copy and paste, and that's what I like to do. But we'll undo that. But that's just if you wanted to do your own extra ones, or you wanted to input extra ones, you can easily do that. That's no problem. Right. So these are all the cost pricings right here. Oh, and yes, this one doesn't have a dollar sign, so that's why the price was slightly different for the one on the bottom, because it just goes down it goes down the list in the E column, how many spaces between here and down here that I pasted. So it might be looking at a totally different area on the cost price list. So that's why it's really important to do the dollar sign. I'll just double check that everything else is dollar sign. Yep. So that's a good example, even though I wasn't sure, I wasn't aware of what happened there. But lucky that happened, because I was able to use that as an example. Yeah. Right, so we'll just delete this section as well. I'm not sure why that's there. I think I must have done it by accident previously, so we'll just delete that quick. Okay. Right, so the one underneath, it's the same sort of idea from here. We want to look at the other inputs. So for example, you don't want to do multiple of this section. If you're going to do, like, say, 5 different variations, and that's the base ingredients that you need. Obviously you need your oil, your distilled water, your sodium hydroxide, or your lye, and your sodium lactate. But you might have multiple sections under here. You might want to section it off and send to one variant with lavender, and section it off again and a center with cedar wood, and you might play around with different colored clays for each blend. So that's why I keep this separate from here. So it gives you leeway of adding different variants and knowing the cost pricing. So this works out exactly the same. So lavender per 1,000 grams, I want 15 grams. So if you go here and you click on it, I8 times E99. So we go down to E99, and lavender essential oils right here. And it's the same for cedar wood, same for white clay, rose petals, and for rose petals, that's grams. I just did a rough number in there just to give you an idea. And I'm cutting this particular loaf I have, for example, I'm cutting it into 10 bars. So let's say 2 sheets of paper makes 10 labels. So that's where that pricing comes from. And from the cost price base plus oil, if you click on that, and you click on the formula bar, of course, again, we're where it says M2 here, it's got the $ before the M and the $ before the 2. So it will look to here the cost price, which is everything that's listed here, plus between each reference here, lavender, cedarwood, white clay, rose petals, and paper packaging, there's a plus, 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 plus. And I'll just quickly show you, for example, I will delete that, for example. Right. So M2, it's looking up there, and you hit the plus key, and you want to take all these into account because that's part of the cost pricing. So you just click plus and click, and it automatically does it for you. Hit enter. If you just want to double check, which I always double check to make sure everything's selected, and that's that. And for how much quantity you like, this is really easy. Just change. There's no formula in this bar, so you can change it as you please. Let's say I want to cut it 10 bars, and then it divides 10 by the total cost price, and that's $1.78 a bar. And then if you want to wholesale it, what I usually do is I use that figure, and that's where the blue is, M8, and I times it by 2.5. And then for retail, because I do sell in retail, so I'll double that. So this is not the exact pricing, this is just a rough, I just put in random figures everywhere, and this is just to show how cost pricing is calculated in Excel. I personally love Excel. I highly recommend Excel. It's just really easy to use in terms of keeping track of all your recipes, because this is also a recipe keeper too, because as you see here, it's showing all the inputs by weight, and it's very accurate, and it shows you the cost pricing. So Excel is like my recipe keeper / cost pricing analysis book type of thing, I guess you can call it. And here, let's say you want to cut into 10 bars, which is for the loaf I use in my videos. That's it's a 12 bar. You can get 12 bars out of it if you cut it at 2.1 centimeters, or as you've seen in my latest videos, I've been cutting it at 2.54 centimeters, which is 1 inch, so that's 10 bars, but I was cutting them at 12 before. So you can easily change that to 12, and the cost price obviously changes because you're dividing 12 by that number, and your wholesale price will obviously change, and your retail price will obviously change. So one thing you got to do, one thing you do got to look at, like for example, because I do supply in retail stores, I look at the price of other bars that are around the same weight and quality as mine, and that's how I price my bars. So it just depends where you are in the world. It depends where you are in Australia. It's going to be different wherever you are, like wherever you're situated. And it's important to do your own research in your area to find out what the going price is retail-wise. If you're not going to retail right and you're doing the market rate, like when you go to the markets and how they kind of price their bars there, they don't really have to worry about wholesaling. So generally I see markets when I go, and I've gone to many markets to have a look at how they price their soap bars, and they're usually around the $6 and $7 mark. I've seen maybe some of them $8, but it's generally in Australia it's around the 6 or 7, and that's for handmade, really good quality cold processed soap bars, and that's generally like the going rate. So you just got to know where your target audience is, where you're selling your stuff, and it will greatly differ how your strategy is. And it's just like what me and Ellie talked about in the interview. You got to know where your business is heading. You got to have strategies, vision, and so you just got to know your target audience. Right, so that's how I also do, this is how I do soaps when I track cost pricing, but I do it for everything. I do it for candles, for soy wax melts, and I didn't go into the soy wax melts or candles in this video. I'm just keeping it to soap making, but by all means, like there is plenty of room here to work with, and I left some spaces on the bottom, like for wax, candle wax, and you can put in your supplier, your grams or units. So obviously if you're working with wicks, it's a unit and not a gram. So say you buy 10 wicks for $2, then you put in here 10, and then the cost 2, and then it works out per unit. Same with candle jars, and the wicks are down here too. So, and you can obviously put in paper packaging like a label as well for your candles. So this is just like across the board. It's just really fantastic, and this is so accurate in pricing for you to find out your individual cost price per bar, and it's just a lot easier to keep track of everything this way. So what inspired me to do this actual video was Ellie from Ellie's Everyday, and also a viewer from her channel that's come over to my channel as well, by the name Boop. So I was actually quite happy when I heard the idea. I just instantly, had a light bulb moment, and I thought, oh wow, yeah, that actually would be a good video to do. And coupled with my SAP calculation video, I thought those two things that I've covered are really important for soap making, especially if you're a beginner or wanting to work out how to price your handmade cold process soap if you're planning to sell them. And so big shout out to Boop and Ellie, and also I'd like to let Boop know that I've gone with her name from my soap cutter, Home Slice, and I will be getting a slab cutter hopefully next week on Monday, and I've got myself a new slab as well, so I'll be calling the slab cutter Home Slice version 2, and I'll be doing a video of next week of my new slab and my new slab cutter, and I'm really excited to try that out. It's the first time I've ever worked with slabs, so you're going to see me on my tippy toes, first time ever working with a slab. So that should be very interesting, and I am working with a new fragrance, so fingers crossed that it does not accelerate like the rustic mocha, but if it does, that's okay, we'll get through it, I'm sure. And I'm hoping that if it does accelerate fast, at least the slab gives me a lot more leniency in terms, or you can just shove it straight in there and just like pat it out, and it's not as narrow as those loaf molds I was using before, so it should be alright. So once again, shout out to Boop, thank you very much for the name and also the inspiration for the idea for this particular video. I actually quite enjoyed doing this video, and I hope you have all enjoyed it too. Once again, thanks to all for watching, and we've made it to the end of the video, so hopefully you've learned something new. I really appreciate all the comments in the comment section. I try to respond to everybody, and I'm really appreciative of all the positive comments I've been receiving since starting my channel. And head on over to Instagram and Facebook and follow me there. And if you find my content useful, please consider donating to my content creation donation page on my website to help sustain me into creating more content in the future. I've got so many more videos I would love to make. I'm very passionate about sharing my knowledge, and I hope that you all enjoy watching. And until next time, be safe and happy pricing. Bye for now.